The people generally, it seems, had some sympathy for the blind, and some would give to a blind person who was begging. But the blind at that time, the time of the Lord Jesus, could not really take part in society and its activities. They couldn't do much more than beg. They were some of society's outsiders. We noted in our last recording that the Lord Jesus healed a blind man. He had made him able to see again. And now, in today's recording, we'll see that he has something for another of society's outsiders, a totally different sort of person, and in a totally different way. We'll read Luke chapter 19, verses 1 to 10. He entered Jericho and was passing through. And behold, there was a man named Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was rich. And he was seeking to see who Jesus was, but on account of the crowd, he could not, because he was small in stature. So he ran on ahead and climbed up into a sycamore tree to see him, for he was about to pass that way. And when Jesus came to the place, he looked up and said to him, Zacchaeus, hurry and come down, for I must stay at your house today. So he hurried and came down and received him joyfully. And when they saw it, they all grumbled, he's gone in to be the guest of a man who's a sinner. And Zacchaeus stood and said to the Lord, Behold, Lord, the half of my goods I give to the poor. And if I've defrauded anyone of anything, I restore it fourfold. And Jesus said to him, Today salvation has come to this house, since he also is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost. So Zacchaeus was a rich tax collector, but he was despised by the ordinary people because he collected money for their enemies, the Roman occupying power. The Lord Jesus was in the neighborhood. Zacchaeus was short and there were crowds around. Clearly, Zacchaeus had heard about the Lord Jesus and wanted to see him very much. So not worrying about what everyone would think of him, he climbed a tree and watched from above. When Jesus came by, he looked up into the tree and saw Zacchaeus there and called him by his name and invited himself to Zacchaeus' house. Now, that must have astonished Zacchaeus. Jesus even knew his name, and he received the Lord Jesus joyfully. Yet again, we hear grumbling. This time it's not just the scribes and Pharisees. This time it's the crowd. I'm sure that they'd have all liked to have the famous healer come to their home, but he chose to stay with someone who they considered a traitor, really, and probably a bad man. So perhaps to answer these grumblings, Zacchaeus suggested to the Lord that he wasn't the bad man that they thought he was. He gave half his goods to the poor, and if he'd taken more from anyone than was fair, he restored this fourfold. Well, that was good. That was very good. We see that the Lord Jesus tells Zacchaeus that salvation has come to his house. But notice that salvation had come to his house that very day. Salvation didn't come when he was doing his good works. His works had nothing to do with his salvation. Today, salvation has come to this house, since he also is a son of Abraham, the Lord Jesus said. Well, Abraham actually had several groups of descendants. The Israelites were one group, and Zacchaeus belonged to that group. He belonged to that group from birth, of course. But there is another group of descendants of Abraham that are relevant here. Paul, the author of many of the New Testament letters, when writing to the Christians in Galatia later on, explains this. He writes, "It is those of faith who are sons of Abraham." We could say that they're Abraham's spiritual descendants. And now salvation had come that day to Zacchaeus' house because of his faith in the Lord Jesus Christ. He was a son of Abraham by natural birth, But that day he became a son of Abraham in that more important way too. He was now a spiritual son of Abraham. Like all of us, Zacchaeus was a lost sinner, but Jesus had come to seek and to save lost sinners. And Zacchaeus was a lost sinner who was found and saved. I think that this statement that Jesus made about himself, the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost, I think that's one of the main themes of Luke's biography of the Lord Jesus. All of us, until found by Jesus, are lost and away from God. And that's the main reason why Jesus came, to find us. Well, here's something for us to think about. The Son of Man, that's Jesus, came to seek and to save the lost. All are lost until found by Jesus.